We are at the top of the hour here, so I'm going to kick this off and get started. So welcome everyone to the November edition of the VanPug and Modern Excel User Group Meetup. We are going to be looking at Power BI and Excel data types with Jakob Nielsen in just a few minutes. So once again, welcome. I'm really glad to have everybody here. Obviously, this isn't our sort of normal time going, but Jakob is actually coming to us live from Denmark, so we wanted to make sure that he wasn't trying to pull this off at 2 o'clock in the morning, because we thought that might be a little unfair, even though it is Power BI and Excel and pretty awesome. You know, Jakob likes to sleep too. So I want to say a big thanks to the sponsors, as we usually do. Excel Guru, my company, for pulling us together, organizing the speakers and hosting. SkillWave Training, which is our training division. If you're looking for awesome Excel and Power BI training, that is definitely the place to go. Microsoft for providing us with the software, providing with us a speaker today, and so many other things that they do for us. And also just want to throw a quick shout out again for those of you who are joining us for the first time and haven't actually heard about the Excel Guru add-in Monkey Tools. This is an add-in that we use to actually make building better business intelligence models faster in Excel. It works a lot with Power Query, a lot with Power Pivot, and can even import your data models from Power BI back to Excel. So far as I'm aware, we are the only software on the planet that can actually do that today. So just something to keep in mind if you're working back and forth between these two technologies. Our next meetup that we have coming up, our next meetup in November, our Power BI track. I'm super excited to be welcoming Ed Hansbury to our stage here, and he is going to be covering the skills that your Power BI team needs in order to succeed. So that's going to be actually a cool little presentation. I'm not sure it's going to be so technically focused as much as the skills around what actually is going on in organizations. I'm actually really looking forward to seeing that. For our next Excel track on December 2nd, we have Daniel Stein-Fairhurst is going to be joining us live from Sydney, Australia, and she is going to be talking about best practices with financial modeling. So if you're in the financial modeling or accounting space, it's going to be super, super interesting for you. And if you're not, well, you know what? It's never too late to learn about financial modeling. It's a fantastic stuff, and let me tell you, it's taken me a long way. So I highly would encourage you to sign up. Both of these are now open for RSVPs, so please make sure that you jump on and sign up early for these as well. All right, what else have I got here for you? Oh yeah, of course, it's now I can actually finally say that Master Your Data is actually available in physical copies through all of our different online retailers, although I do believe that the Canadian Amazon version still thinks that it's coming out in November 2020. But regardless, you can now pick up both digital copies at skillwave.training and physical copies from anywhere in the world. If you're looking for probably the easiest link for international shipping, check out the Mr. Excel bookstore. That is a hot link in the slide deck, which I believe has already been posted, and you can get right there through Mr. Excel's bookstore. If you're an American customer, there's a second link there that will take you to his American shop. Accelerator BI, Matt Allington's company, is shipping in Australia. That's going to be your fastest way to get your hands on a physical copy there. And then, of course, if none of those work, or you're a very, very loyal Amazon customer that wants to help send Jeff Bezos into more space missions, you can always click the Amazon link at the bottom as well. The last thing I'm going to say before we turn our stage over to Jakob today is if you are looking to come and try your hand at speaking, we would love to have you. There's a little survey at the bottom of this. If you just fill that out, tell us what your idea is. Are you more of an Excel or more of a Power BI focus, or do you like to blend those two things across? We love to welcome new people to our stage. I'm excited that we've actually got some new people that are coming up in 2022 already, and we're always looking for more people. So if you're interested, just fill out the survey. We'd love to have you, and we'll connect to get you set up and go forward from there. All right, I think that is it for my slide deck, Jakob. So I am going to let you take over the screen, and we'll kick this off and get it started with your material here. Just for reference. Sorry, just for reference for folks, Jakob and I had a conversation at the beginning of this, and the chat window is going to be active the entire time we're here, and I'm going to moderate questions and comments. So if there are questions, please feel free to ask as you go along. And Jakob's asked me to interrupt him at a logical time to pose those questions so that we can actually have them answered live as he goes along. So there we go.
And I would appreciate that. Jens, if you have a question, someone else will have the same question, and the goal is to have you get the most of this session. So please step forward and ask the questions during the session. So thanks Ken for the introduction, and also thanks for the invitation to join the group here today, and for your flexibility and an earlier time, so that as Ken was saying, I can get some sleep during the night. I'm Jakob. I'm a principal designer in the Excel product team. I have a wonderful job of working on a product that's used by so many people in so many different ways. And my role is basically to observe, connect with customers, observe how people are using the product, talk to them about how we can make it better, come up with new ideas for that, and then work with program managers, engineers, and others in the product team to make some of those things happen. And one of the things that I've worked on during the past 2 years is some new data types for Excel, and that is what I'm going to focus on for this particular presentation. I did see that there was some issues with the network quality, so I hope you will interrupt me, Ken, if I'm not coming through and you can hear me and so on. But just to talk about what this session is about, we introduced late last year to a new capability where we bring together Power BI and Excel to provide a way for people to provide easy access and secured access to centralized data or reference data. And we do that through a feature that we've named organization data types. And that is what I'm going to demo today. But before I do that, I'd like to take you through a little bit of the history around data types in Excel, because it's more than just the organization data types. That we also have more consumer type, education type data types powered by Wolfram and other built-in data types. Plus, it's really a foundational set of technologies in Excel that we are building new features on top of. For example, new functions and also abilities to create your own functions through lambdas and so on. So it's a story of how that came about and what the motivation is for that. So hey, that's where I'm going to start. Yes.
Jakob, just a quick note. You are freezing a little bit. I'm wondering if maybe shutting down your video might preserve you a little more bandwidth, just to make sure that the audio comes through clear.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Let me do that and see if that helps a little bit. Okay, let me again data types. What led to that, and then start with the demos. And then most of what I will do is doing demos. I'm still getting bad network quality, but let me just check up on something here. Good. Let's get started. Data types in Excel, what is that? And in order to understand what data types is in Excel, we basically have to go back to before the end of the 70s, where running a business pretty much looked like this: a piece of paper with a grid on it, and then numbers and text, and then you did calculations and so on. And here's one example of that. The great thing and something that we can be really happy about is the fact that a person named Dan Bricklin got this idea in the late 70s to actually take that idea of the grid with numbers and text and bring it onto the computer. And VisiCalc for the Apple II was born in '79. Again, basic concept. There's a a grid or a sheet. You can put numbers and text on that sheet, and you can add calculations. And with that, sort of the whole category of spreadsheets was created. There's also something called Excel that came along, and this is Excel in 2003. And even by then, the category of spreadsheets had sort of evolved. And I'm picking Excel from 2003 because the same year, we had a researcher at Microsoft, Simon Peyton-Jones, write a paper that talked about sort of the limitations of that model of spreadsheets. And part of this paper was this notion that there seemed to be a glass ceiling that sort of limits the scope of what can be modeled with a spreadsheet. And also sort of the reach of what a domain expert can do with Excel. And what he proposed back in the paper from 2003 was basically two things. One thing was, hey, we need to provide a way where end users of Excel can create their functions to better reflect the abstractions that they have in their domain. So a way to define new functions. And some of you may have seen that recently we introduced the concept of a lambda function, and that is actually a function that can be used to create functions in Excel. So that's sort of an outcome of his original thinking. Next, and this is where data types fits in, was this idea that what you put on a spreadsheet in this grid can be more than just numbers and text. You can have data values that are more complex or richer, and those data types can better reflect the end user's domain. And that could be arrays or vectors or even very domain-specific data types that were implemented by a third party or created by the users themselves. And that's what we're going to focus on in this particular presentation. Good. More than a decade went by where the Excel team was busy doing other things, but around 2014-15, the team started looking at, okay, what is next? What can we do to advance the whole category of spreadsheets? And they did some research. The team that worked on this did some research and saw many of the same things that Simon was pointing out in his paper from 2003. And then they sort of revisited the idea of data types or compound data types for Excel. And that led to the introduction of the very first data types that we got in the product, which was stocks and geography. And I'd like to take you through that by doing a demo of the stocks and geography data types. Some of you may already have experienced that, and I'm going to do that in the web browser version of Excel. How am I doing on the sound? Am I coming through, or is it still problematic?
No, it's much better than it was, yeah.
Okay. So here I have a blank workbook. There's no connections being established from this workbook or data that has already been imported. And I'd like to work with some information about stocks. And I can, in this spreadsheet, I can enter some text in this, which happens to be stock tickers. And Excel then, sort of recognizes that and says, hey, maybe you want to convert this to stocks. But before I do that, I will also just put in some numbers here into my grid as well. So text and numbers, nothing special here. But this column that I have here, which are the stock tickers, I can actually convert that into the stock's data type. So if I go to the data tab in the ribbon and drop down this little gallery, I can actually choose the stocks icon here. And what it does is that it goes to a service that we have behind Excel that has all of the information about stocks. And in this particular case, it found them all, which is awesome. And it replaced the tickers with the names of the companies and the exchange where the stock is traded. But that's not all, because these are not just text. These are data types. So I can actually go and click this small icon here, if I can hit it, and you can sort of inspect what is behind the cell in terms of all of the information that Excel now knows about this particular stock. So you have the price, you have what's the official name of the company, the ticker symbol, when it was last traded, things, what exchange, and so on. And you also have that for the other stocks as well. And of course, I can sort of take that a bit further, because I may want to take some of this information and put it into my Excel model. So let's just create a table here and just say that in my table I have my stock, and then this is a quantity column and so on. Excel then allows me to pick information from the stock data type. So I can go here and see all of the different information that's there, and I can say, well, I like to take the price and pull that out. And it does that for all of the stocks that I have in my table. Maybe I want to do how much it has changed today, as well as what is the percentage of that change. And if you go into each of the cells, you can see that it actually references the stock column and then the name of the property. So it's sort of the dot price that pulls that out. The cool thing about this is that I didn't need to create a connection to some data or import a file into the workbook and transform that data and do VLOOKUPs or anything. The information is just there. And furthermore, if I go and hit refresh, you can see that when there's new data, that data will also be updated in my workbook. That's simply something that these data types, or in this particular case, the stocks data type has built in. And you can put it with the stocks data type. You can add a way to actually get that auto refreshed and so on. So that's the stock data type, and I can use that to not only pull out information, but I can also do a little bit of calculation here. So I can add a total column and say I want to total the quantity times the price, and this participates fully in the Excel calc model behind here, as though it was values that were entered into the sheet. Okay. Let me show you one of the other data types. We can try the geography data type. So let's do some cities. And there's 3 of them, and then it suggests to convert to cities. That's not what I want. I want to do a conversion to the geography data type, which also has cities in it. And now I have 3 data types, Vancouver, Seattle, and Copenhagen, and you can see the cards for each of them. So you may be wondering, like, what's the largest city in terms of population and wonder which of these three, and I can go in and in a cell make a reference to that information. And in this particular case, it is the population that I want to put in. And so this is the population of Vancouver, and if I drag this down, I can see Seattle and Copenhagen as well, the population of that. So this is the geography data type. Again, if there's new data, this probably doesn't change, these numbers probably doesn't change that often, but then that will also be updated and so on. Again,
Jakob,
no import of data and so on. Yes?
We got one question just on disambiguation of data. So, for example, Vancouver. There's a Vancouver, British Columbia, and a Vancouver, Washington. That's not too far away from us. They're obviously very different cities. How do you deal with the disambiguation to make sure that you've got the right one?
Well, in this particular case, it was very, very confident in Vancouver being. Let's see what Vancouver had actually got, right? Because we can put in the country region for these. And you can see that is actually in itself a data type called Canada, right? So it had a lot of confidence in and that would be the right choice. But you're right that there's a Vancouver in Washington as well. And what I can do here is I can actually right-click on the data type and then go to the data type menu here and then say I want to change that to something else. And then you get all of the different options for what Vancouver it could be. So in this particular case, there's a Vancouver in Clark Country in Washington, which is the other one. But in the case that it's not very confident about the choice, it could be two things and they're sort of equally ranked and so on, it will actually display a question mark and then let you bring up the data selector side pane or task pane and let you choose which one. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, I think so. There's a couple more questions just around the actual sourcing of this and how you pick and choose and whatnot. And I think that there might be a little just a bit of confusion on this thing as to, so it's, the examples that we're showing with the stocks and whatever else, I mean, you're putting in a ticker. Those tickers, I believe, are only found on one exchange, so it's automatically picking up the correct exchange, is my understanding. So the question is, like, what happens if something's actually shown on multiple exchanges? How would that be handled? How do you pick where it goes? And correct me if I'm wrong on this one, Jakob, but the answer is we don't really pick where it goes. I mean, Microsoft has come out and said these are the authoritative sources that we're going to use. If we find any ambiguity between these sources that we've actually picked as valid, then we'll let you choose. Is that about right?
Well, in terms of the source of the data for stocks, and you could see that in the card as well, is all of the information comes from a service called Refinitiv. With that company used to be Thomson Reuters. So that's where we get the data from. But the question about which exchange is it choosing, in this particular case, it's the New York Stock Exchange. But I actually wonder if, let me see here, if we went in and said J&J again, okay, it will just give us the same one. I was just wondering here if we could go and change and see the other places that is traded. No, it's not. That is not coming up, but if I need to go change that, search for it again, and now you can actually see that if I search for the name, it will in the data selector, when I bring that up, it will actually present all of the different places where it is traded. But it had a lot of confidence in the New York Stock Exchange one, and that's why it brought that into the grid right away.
Cool.
So you can't choose for the stocks which exchange you want to get the particular data from.
Do you know if there's any defaulting in that? Like, let's say, for example, if you're in Brazil, does it default to a Brazilian stock exchange versus New York, or
That's a great idea. That would be really smart if it did. Like, it would sort of combine you as a user where you are with as context for when it does the search. That's a great idea. I don't know if it is actually doing that. And the same with geography. It may be like it was based more on your location and so on. If Excel knew that.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure either. I need to travel some more. It'd be nice to get back on a plane and go somewhere, then I can actually find out. But yeah. I think for right now, Jakob, that's answered everybody's questions about how this one goes. So if there are other questions, feel free to throw them in the chat, and we'll let Jakob move on with more stuff.
Yeah. But feel free to just ask away. So let me just go back to the presentation for a second. So we got the demo of the stocks and geography data types. You can do pretty incredible things with those. Here's an example of a template that we've created to track, a portfolio. This is all based on the stocks data type. Again, I mentioned earlier on that we recently announced more than 100 different data types that are more consumer oriented or education oriented. So, for example, we have a chemistry data type that can basically give you all of the information that you dream about in terms of the periodic table and so on. We even have a data type that does baby names and food and activities and so on. And that's the, collectively we call that the Wolfram data types, because it's the Wolfram Alpha company that the data comes from. So switching gears a little bit, about 2 years ago, we started a project and we went out to talk with people working in enterprises about, or companies, businesses, about how they get data into Excel, both from a high level and at a very detailed level. What kind of data do you use in Excel? How do you get it into Excel? What kind of difficulties do you have? What would you wish you could do? And we also, as part of that, showed them the stocks and geography data types, as you just saw. And for almost everyone that we showed it to, that we got the following sort of responses. First, oh, this is really cool and new, and this is exciting that you can do this. Which is great. However, most people said, but I don't really have a use for that in my work, because I don't work with stocks as part of my job, or geography is maybe not something I need. So maybe this is better for someone else. And of course, if everyone says that, then it's sort of not good for anyone, at least in a sort of in a work setting. But then most people said, but if I could get this this data type thing with my own data, that would help me a lot and relieve me from doing some of the things that I do when I want to get data into Excel and keep that refreshed and updated and so on. And that is sort of what led to our work with what we call organization data types. And I'd like to start out by just giving you a demo of that. And let me switch to the Excel client. And in the client here, I have a workbook that I created that contains a list of customers with more or less correct names of the customers, and then some complaint or issue that they want to have addressed. And I basically just copied this into to the workbook. And if you imagine that I'm someone that needs to call these customers and try to address the complaint that they have, what I would typically do was to go into some sort of a database or CRM system and look up these customers one by one, and maybe copy paste information about them into my workbook. Or I would have to have a large list of customers that I have imported into a different sheet, and then do lookups and so on. But with data types, I don't need to do any of that. I can basically just go to the customers and select the column of customer names, and then go up to my data tab again. And in my data tab, I have the data types gallery, and there's something called organization. So when I just click organization here, it comes up with a data selector that gives me all of the different data types available to me. And the nice thing is that there's one right at the top here, sorry, that's called customers. And when I click on that, it basically goes through the same search that we saw it do with stocks and geography, but this time it searches my customer database or customer table. And we were pretty lucky. You can see that it actually went through, and even with the ones that only had a partial name, it actually found those. And now these cells are data types. So I can go and again look into the information here and see, for this customer, who is the contact, and things like what is the phone number. This is
Hey, Jakob, you're breaking up on me a bit again.
Okay, I can see that. Let me just get that I can add the contact name and the phone number, and I can also pull out information such as how many orders what's the current order total, and so on from my system. And I can start doing Excel things such as, for example, sorting the largest to smallest and so on, so I can have some information that I can prioritize on. Again, no connection. I didn't need to go find a database or something to get this data in. And this is all linked up. So if I go refresh the data, it will actually bring in the latest data into this particular workbook. So that's an example of one organizational data type. In this particular case, it's capturing customers. I have another example here of a more complete template. Again, customers has been used, so I can choose to go in and select a customer here. It brings in all of the information such as the address, phone numbers, and so on, what their discounts are, and so on, into the workbook. I have a different data type that I've created for products. So this is the products on this invoice. If I again go to organization, I can actually choose my products data type, and it goes into my product list and does a lookup of that. And for example, brings back a picture of the product and lots of information about the products, which I can then choose to go in and reference. So if I take the product description here, I want to do what is the unit price, and it brings in the price information for all of the products. And you can see that this participates in the calc model. And if I, for example, order 10 of these, it will go in and say there's a discount and so on. So that's products, the products data type. Same characteristics. I can pull out information easily, and I can also get the data refreshed when there's new data.
Hey, Jakob, there's a question that we have, or a couple of questions we have in the queue that are sort of related to being able to maintain version control, I guess, and historical pricing and things like that with things. Is that a possibility in data types? How would you actually manage that? And then the second question is, where do you actually store the organization data types?
With regard to, if you use a data type in a workbook, they will be linked to the source data. So if you hit refresh, it will go get the latest data. There's currently not a way of breaking that connection between the data type in the workbook and the data source, which I think is what the question was. How do you actually sort of snapshot or log data into a particular state? And you can say you would probably need that for this case with the invoice in a real scenario. But the other question, thanks for asking that, because which is the question about where's all this data stored and so on, because I want to basically show you how to do that. So this is just a summary of what we've gone through in terms of how you discover the data types, what you can do with them, and also the fact that you can refresh them. But I want to cover sort of how to curate one of these data types. How do you actually create them? And this is where Power BI comes in, because what we've chosen to do for the data types is to use Power BI as a way to curate the data types. And I like to show that for the customer data type and for the products data type. So I have a data set here, or a model of a data set for, in this case, it's Northwind Traders. And this is sort of pretty basic Power BI model that has customers in it. It has products and so on. And the way to so the customer table basically contains all of the customers. The product table contains all of the products, and that could be those two could be created by a query into a database or into a system in the sort of hundreds of ways that you can bring data into Power BI. But how do I get a data type out of this? And the way to do this is to go into Power BI desktop, into the model of the data set, and basically select a table. In this particular case, I've selected customers. And we added a new property on the table object called is featured table. And with this, you can actually select that this table becomes what we called a featured table, which is what Excel is using to figure out what data types is available for the user. When you turn this on, Power BI will ask you two questions, or actually three questions. It will say, please describe this, what this is. Tell me what the row label is, like what do you want to see in Excel when we find one of these. And then please tell me what the key column is, so that I know, so Excel and the service knows how to get back to the latest information about the data type or the row in the table. And that's basically it. And that has been done in this particular case for customers and for products. What happens next is that you go publish this data set. I don't want to do that now or take the time to do that now. You publish this data set to, to Power BI. And let me just see if I can find that. And once you have published that to powerbi.com and you have shared that data set with other users, once they boot up Excel or start up Excel, they will see the data types or the featured tables that are in that data set in their data type gallery. And that is all it takes to curate a data type. So just in summary, the way it's done is data types, the organization data types are featured tables in Power BI, and Excel will go and inspect that information in Power BI, look at what is available to a particular user. Is there a question?
Nope, I think that was just background chatter. I've muted it.
That's totally fine. That's totally fine. I hope that sort of gave an idea of, how do you actually create an organization data type. One of the things that you saw was that you can also have images with organization data types. Let me just show you briefly how that is done. And I want to do that by switching to another demo. And since we are in Denmark, I want to use Legos as an example of that. I have a data type that basically has all of the Lego sets that's been done since Lego started. And let me try to put one in. The Death Star is a popular one, the Star Wars Death Star. So when I put that in and go to my data tab here, click organization. Let me just do that for a second and search for Lego. I have my Lego sets data type. So when I select that, it will go look up the Death Star. And there's many of those in the Lego catalog. And I can, scroll through that. And this one is probably the one that has the most parts in it, although I'm not exactly sure. Maybe this one. I can go in and inspect that. So this is all of this is the information I have. What year? How many parts? And so on. So let me just select this one and bring that back. Again, it's a data type now, so I have all of the information that we just saw, including the picture and so on with me. And I can do things like pull out, like what's the set number, what theme is it in, what year, how many parts, and also do links to information. And the hyperlinks are coming with the data type. So for example, what's the link to the lego.com page, or the link to the instructions and so on that are out there for that particular set. But I wanted to show you how to insert pictures. So let's say that I want to have an image next to each of those, and data types actually allow me to put images in the grid. So if I insert a new column here to have the image, the way I do that is similar to how I reference any other information in the data type. I just type the equal sign, go to the data type, hit the period here, and then scroll to the property called image. And once I enter that formula into a cell, it will actually, and because I have a table, it will copy that formula to the entire column, make it the column formula. And you can see that all of these images that it pulled in now sits inside of a cell. It's not the way you used to know it, where images sat on top of the grid. No, they actually sit inside of a cell, and they actually behave nicely in terms of any other information. So for example, if you put a filter on this and say I'm only interested in seeing the sets that came out in 2020, you can see that there's nothing left of other images and so on. There's only those for that particular row. This is something that we've seen customers be very, very excited about, where if they have a product catalog with lots of images. The way this is done is again with Power BI. So this particular data set that I have for the Lego data type is an even simpler model. I basically just have a Lego sets table and then a themes table. But the Lego sets table, and I can just show you show that to you. So here's all of the sets. There is in this data set about 18,000 different sets. It's more has been added since I last updated it, but it's a fairly elaborate set of fairly large table with products. And in that, I have an image property. And the way, probably may have done this in Power BI, the way Excel understands this as an image is that there is an advanced property on that field that basically says that it's an image URL. As the data category, and once you do that, set that property, Excel will show images based on the URL that is in that column. So you can see that this is actually a computed column that says where to find the particular image. And then that is then brought back to Excel. Good. So that was how to add images to the data. One thing that I mentioned to begin with is that the way the data is brought down to Excel is also in a secured fashion. And one of the things that we've invested in over the last year or two is actually information protection. And that carries the settings for that you have in Power BI, how the information is classified, for example, confidential information. Once you use a data type in a workbook, that setting or that sensitivity setting is then also stamped into the workbook. So if you pull information that's confidential, then the workbook will then also be confidential, and you will get these policy tips with the data. So it's not like a way to sort of leak data or disclose data you don't want to have disclosed. And that's also preferred when or preserved when the data is updated and so on. Okay, just to summarize, what you've seen here is demos of the organizational data types. That is now available to everyone that has, as you know, we're rolling it out through the different channels. And we are in the semi-annual channel that just came out in July and August. And so we are out with the broadest number of users that can actually use this feature across the Windows and Mac desktops, as well as Excel for the web. All of those endpoints for Excel are enabled to use organization data types. You do need to have a Power BI Pro license in order to get the data types in Excel. And you can get that either on its own or together with an E5 subscription of Microsoft 365. We have announced and we are rolling out some changes to that licensing. So there's good news coming if you are having Power BI and have the data sets in premium capacity, then users don't need to have that Power BI Pro license. Or you can actually place the data types in your My Workspace and create your own personal data type. That is a data type that can't be shared broadly, but at least you can experiment and with the data types in your My Workspace without needing the Power BI Pro license. Everything else still requires the Power BI Pro license.
Awesome, Jakob. I'm going to interrupt you for a couple of questions, if that's okay here. The first one I'm just going to ask is Christian is asking if these organizational data types are they only available for Power BI Pro? I think you said they are right now. You need a Power BI Pro license, but you're working on making it work with Power BI or premium per user, I'm guessing, and premium. His question is: any chance for Power BI free that they'll be able to use these?
Yes, if the data set is in a Power BI premium capacity, you will be able to use it, or you put them in your My workspace. If it's in another workspace, then it requires the Power BI Pro license.
Fair enough. Henry's asking all the suggestions around the data types would suggest that everything is designed and stored. And I think we're talking specifically about image links here, that they have to be stored in the web. So how is it enabled when working offline in Excel? What happens if you've hooked all this stuff up and you've got all your data types and you're offline? Will it actually connect to them at all?
Well, the data that for the data types that are in the workbook. So for example, when we did the Lego sets that I have in that table, all of the data, including the image, is in the Excel workbook. So if you're offline, you can still view that data as it was the last time you were online and refreshed. But you cannot refresh it. It won't refresh the data because there's no connection to actually go get the data from Power BI or go get the latest images from the web. But you will see what was there when you were last online, even if, for the case where you are offline and don't have a connection. Yeah.
Cool. The last question is actually around, and I'm just trying to scroll back and find all the information. So the comment from Ian is so this doesn't work with Dynamics 365 finance and operations. Now I'm not familiar with the D365 and that particular setup here, but it sounds like Ian uses an add-on for Excel and is wondering if there's an alternative or a complementary platform to be able to pull the data directly out of the Dynamics 365 finance and operations, I guess, instead of Power BI. Ian, if I haven't got that right, please just either unmute or fire something into the chat on that. But I think that's the direction that he's looking for here. Is it possible to serve up a data type from a different Microsoft source rather than just Power BI at this time?
It's the organizational data types that is curated by having data sets in Power BI. So you need to have that step in there somehow. We don't go directly to Dynamics or to Dataverse or other databases directly. We go through Power BI. So you need to, in order to set this up, you need to make queries inside of Power BI that is getting the data from the source system. So it sort of works with Dynamics, but it's through Power BI. I hope that answered your question.
I think it does. That's basically Henry's actually just put that exactly in the chat. The D365 to Power BI to data type, and Ian's put a thumbs up on it. So I'm guessing that answers the question. There we go.
That's awesome. Good.
I think that's it. Well, actually, just one quick thing I just sort of want to clarify, because Christian has sort of put a comment back in on the licensing thing. My understanding, Christian, just to be clear on this one here, is that there's not a necessity to back the data type with premium capacity. You can do it with just the Power BI Pro license. If you have premium capacity, then you can also do it with potentially with a little bit more, right? So, but a Power BI Pro license is sufficient on its own.
Yes.
Or if it goes into my workspace, as you say.
Yeah, that's correct.
Cool.
Like you can put it in an ordinary, workspace. The requirement is in that case that users have a Power BI Pro license in order to get the data types. If you do have a data sets that is in premium capacity, then that's the change that we are rolling out through the channels. That in that case, you've already sort of got that ability to use the data types without the Power BI Pro license.
Yeah, as Kristen's saying, he says he was hoping he could use it with free without a premium license. Well, dude, you can as long as you don't want to share it with anybody. Then you're all good.
Yeah.
But as soon as, but I mean that's kind of the way with Power BI anyway, right? I mean, as soon as you decide to share your report with somebody, that's when the pro licensing kicks in anyway. So it seems to me that it's kind of based on that same sort of paradigm, which. I'll be honest with you. I mean, I'm going to say that I actually appreciate that because at least it lets me try some things for free without having to go and invest in it. And then once I'm actually convinced, then it makes sense to go and actually take that next step. So that's very cool.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool. I think that's it for questions so far.
To wrap it up, one thing to be aware of is for stocks and geography, you need to have your proofing language, one of the proofing languages installed to be English. So if you're, for example, running with a French version of Excel for some reason, then English needs to be in there as a proofing language as well. Good. In terms of a little bit of a call to action, I hope that you've got some appetite of trying out the data types in your tenant and see what they can do, and especially what they can do on your data. Give it a try. Talk to your Excel users about this and demo it to them and so on. And then please send us lots of feedback through Excel and Power BI. You may not think that we look at that, but we actually do that very, very frequently, and it's very helpful for us. And especially if you leave your email address with that feedback, so that we can get back to you and ask clarifying questions and so on. That's super, super helpful. So by any means, use those opportunities to connect with us and send us feedback. Or you can also choose to reach out to me directly. You have my email address there, as well as a short link to my LinkedIn profile, and you're very welcome to connect. And I would love to hear from you in terms of data types specifically, how you're thinking about using them, how they work for you or not work for you, how we can make them better, but also just Excel in general. We are super eager to connect with all of you and hear from you. So thank you so much. There's some resource links. We can provide the presentation afterwards. So I'll send that to Ken so that he can upload that. So you can get the links as well, but you can also use Google or Bing to find all of these in terms of the documentation and templates and so on. So thank you so much for your time today and your interest in this topic. I hope you found the presentation useful, and that you also will find organization data types to be useful within your organization. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Jakob, for coming all the way from Denmark for this thing for us live. I really appreciate it, and we're getting lots of comments pouring in right now that everybody's really enjoyed it and whatnot. So yeah, hopefully we'll get a bunch of people out there that are actually trying it and having some fun there. I got to say, there's a comment in here, at least one, about the Lego data set, and I'm thinking, nice. See, I need to get my hands on that. I got to go figure out what Lego I actually have. It's still got
yeah.
So, that was very cool. Yeah. Kind of neat to see. So yeah, thanks again, bud. I really appreciate you coming. I can tell everybody here for as well. I mean, I've known Jakob for a lot of years, and I genuinely believe him when he says he really wants your emails if you have suggestions or things like that that aren't working or whatnot. I would say definitely take advantage of that. I mean, he's a pretty open guy and loves to listen and get feedback from the user community. So. That is awesome. Thank you for offering that up. And on that note, I don't see any more questions coming in, so I think we'll shut her down for today. Once again, huge thanks for coming and putting this on, Jakob. It was super informative. Love seeing all of it, and hopefully we'll get the chance to have you come back again and follow up on new stuff that comes out in this area, or wherever you end up at Microsoft, because I know sometimes you guys move around to try different things from time to time as well. So
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ken.
Fantastic. Have a great time in Denmark, and we'll see you, I'm sure, sometime soon when you're back on this side of the pond. Awesome. All right. Thanks, everyone. I'm going to shut her down for now. We'll have the session posted within the next 24 to 48 hours, and yeah, we'll catch you in the next one. Don't forget, the Meetup registration is open for our next session with Ed Hansberry on Power BI. So don't forget to sign up for that. We'll catch you next time.